Everything happens for a reason. Now, how many times have you heard this quote? Probably like a million times, right? Now, I was exactly on the same boat. Until the last few years, my dad shared with me the second part to this quote. Everything happens for a reason. And just because we don't see the reason doesn't mean the reason isn't there. Now, I want you to think about something that happened to you in the past, something that you didn't understand at all. But today, when you look at that same thing, you find yourself saying, thank God that that happened to me. Or even if you aren't saying thank God it happened to you, you're at least way more at peace with that thing. Now, at the time, if someone came and told you everything happens for a reason, you probably would have said in your mind, what is this person saying? I don't see this reason right now. Now that's where this quote comes in, because just because we don't see the reason at the time doesn't mean that the reason doesn't exist. And by the way, by no means am I saying that you shouldn't feel sad or annoyed when something supposedly bad happens to you in your life. If you feel an emotion, that means that you care, and that's not a bad thing. A lot of people are very good at not showing their emotions, but that doesn't mean that they don't feel something. So just because you find yourself feeling these emotions when something doesn't go your way or when something happens that you don't understand, that doesn't mean that if you feel sad that you're weak or you're too emotional or whatever it is. It's completely normal to allow yourselves to feel the emotion. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to go down the rabbit hole of saying what if and why me and asking all these questions. Now again, if you find yourself going down the rabbit hole, it's completely normal. We've all been there. But what we want to try to do is we want to try to catch ourselves before we find ourselves really going down that rabbit hole. And now I want to share with you a story that really helped me believe that everything happens for a reason, and just because we don't see the reason doesn't mean that the reason isn't there. Because this one took me a long time to really understand. When I was in high school, the University of British Columbia, UBC, which is a university in Canada, came to visit our school. And I remember when they came, they did a presentation about their university. And as soon as they showed their campus in Vancouver, my eyes started to light up. And I told myself, Omar, this is exactly where I want you to end up for university. So from that day onwards, I did everything in my power to try to end up in the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. I worked so hard to get the grades that they wanted, and I got the grades, and I did everything in my power to have as many extracurricular activities so I can be a very well-rounded student. And I revised the essays for the university like 1 gigillion times. And now I'm usually not someone who's that confident in themselves when it comes to external decisions like a university decision. But for some odd reason, when I sent my application for UBC Vancouver, I was so sure that I was going to get in. Now, I wasn't saying this out loud to people, but on the inside, I had such a strong feeling that I was going to get in. And then we had our senior trip in Singapore. And we found out that UBC Vancouver, or UBC in general, was going to be sending their offers while we were going to be on the trip. And now I remember all my friends were around me when we were gonna find out if I got in or not, and they were recording me and everyone was there. And as soon as I opened the email, I found out that I got waitlisted. And this to me was one of the biggest punches to the face, because I did so much in order to make sure that I was going to get into that university. And I even allowed myself to believe that I was really going to get in because I was so confident about it. Yet, God had a different plan. But at the time, I was a 16-year-old Omar who was only seeing all his dreams getting shattered, and I couldn't think that there could be any reason as to why I didn't get into this university. And I remember I went to the bathroom and I wanted to be alone, and I started crying, and it was such a mess. And now at the time when I got waitlisted, I had this friend of mine who I honestly can't thank enough. She sent an email to UBC letting them know that she had a friend that was really passionate about studying at UBC, and if they could potentially offer him an opportunity to study at one of their campuses, which at the time I did not know there was more than one campus, because all I knew was the Vancouver campus. And then they ended up reaching out to me, and I gave them my application number, and they just said that they would see what they could do for me. But they didn't really mention much about this other campus. All I knew was that UBC was maybe going to review my application, but I honestly didn't put too much hope into it because I didn't want to feel the same way I felt the first time. Until 2 days, 48 hours before I accepted my other university offer, I get an email from UBC telling me that I got accepted to UBC Okanagan. So then I go online and I look at the pictures of the campus, and the campus was beautiful. But the city still wasn't Vancouver. So I told myself, how about you go to UBC Okanagan, which was in the city of Kelowna, which is a 3-4 hour car ride from Vancouver. And I told myself, if you don't like the city and if you don't like the campus, you can easily just move. But little did I know that ending up in UBC Okanagan was one of the best things that could have ever have happened to me. Because as a result of that experience, I joined the Language Tandem program, which led to me being fluent in French and then also learning Spanish. I also ended up working as a teaching assistant for 3 years and a residence advisor for 3 years, and I also got the chance to be a research assistant. And now why am I sharing this? Because if I didn't end up going to UBC Okanagan, all these opportunities that I'm sharing with you might not have been available to me. Now sure, maybe going to UBC Vancouver would have also led to another beautiful experience. But at the time, when I was crying in the bathroom and feeling so bad about not going to UBC Vancouver, I didn't know that this other life was also possible, because I didn't see the reason at the time. This is why I want to share this story with you. Just because you don't see the reason right now doesn't mean that the reason isn't there. So much of the time in life, we can only connect the dots when we look backwards. That 16-year-old Omar had no idea that going to UBC Okanagan would have led to the 23-year-old Omar of today, who's currently living in Montreal. So a completely different place as to where I thought I was going to end up. Well, maybe not completely different, because it's still within the same country, but it's still a 5-hour flight. But you get my point. I needed to make this video because even knowing this, I sometimes find myself, or maybe not sometimes, a lot of the time find myself stressing about things that have happened to me that are outside of my control. So I always try to remind myself of this so I can lessen the amount of overthinking and anxiety I feel about things that are outside of my control. Now anyways, this video is probably longer than I would have liked, but I really wanted to explain the story, so I hope that I've given you something to think about. And like I always say, this is the Dibos way, find your own way. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I hope to see you soon. Peace!